You are sitting on the edge of your bed, looking at your phone, scrolling through a gallery of photos from a dinner you were never invited to. You see the smiles and the laughter of people you once called your tribe, and for a moment, that familiar ache in your chest returns. It is not just the sting of being left out. It is the deeper, more unsettling realization that even if you had been there, you wouldn't have really been there. You would have been performing a version of yourself that no longer feels real. You would have been wearing a mask that has grown too tight to breathe through. Let me ask you something most people are too afraid to say out loud. Do you feel like you are losing your mind? Or do you feel like you are finally starting to see? Maybe you have noticed that the conversations you used to enjoy now feel incredibly shallow. Maybe you have found yourself retreating into silence because you are tired of being the one who always tries to bridge the gap between who they are and who you are becoming. Maybe you have started to feel like a stranger in your own life, watching the world move in one direction while your soul insists on moving in another. Maybe you have even asked God what is wrong with you, wondering why you cannot just be normal like everyone else. I want you to take a deep breath. This feeling of being an outsider is not a sign that you are failing. It is not a sign that you are unlovable or that you have been forgotten. In fact, it is the exact opposite. The world calls it isolation. The world calls it being lonely or being difficult. But God calls it preparation. He is not punishing you by removing those voices from your life. He is protecting the work He is doing inside of you from being diluted by people who cannot handle your future. Think about this for a second. When a master builder wants to create something that will stand against a 100-year storm, he does not use the same materials he uses for a temporary tent. He handles the stone differently. He cuts it deeper. He keeps it in the workshop longer. He doesn't let the weather or the dust touch it until it is ready to be set in place. If you feel like you are being handled differently than the women around you, it is because you are being built to carry a weight they were never designed to touch. The world says you are being rejected. God says you are being refined. People say you have changed. God says you are finally waking up to who He made you to be before the world told you who you were supposed to be. If you are a woman who feels like she is walking a path that no one else seems to understand, this message is for you. We are going to look at the 6 specific signs that God is separating you for a purpose that the world simply cannot handle. By the end of this video, you will stop apologizing for your distance and start embracing your calling. You are not losing your life. You are finally being given the life you were always meant to have. Number 1. The circle around you has grown smaller without your permission, and that narrowing of your social life was actually God's hand guarding your gate. Let's start with the truth no one wants to say out loud. It is deeply painful to watch. People you have known for years slowly drift away. You haven't had a big fight. There was no dramatic falling out or betrayal that you can point to. Instead, it is a quiet, steady thinning of the crowd. You look at your phone and realize the group chat has been silent for weeks, or worse, you realize they started a new one without you. You find yourself sitting at home on a Friday night, not because you wanted to be alone, but because the invitations simply stopped coming. You used to be the person everyone called. You were the one who fixed the problems, the one who brought the laughter, the one who always showed up. But lately, when you do show up, it feels forced. You sit at the table and listen to the same gossip, the same complaints, and the same shallow jokes, and you feel like you are speaking a language no one else understands. You try to share what is on your heart, and the room goes quiet. They look at you with a mix of confusion and pity, and then they quickly change the subject back to something comfortable. You leave those gatherings feeling more alone than if you had stayed home. You drive back in the dark, gripping the steering wheel, wondering if you are becoming boring or if you are losing your edge. You might even try to force yourself back into the old mold. You try to laugh at the jokes. You try to care about the things they care about, but it feels like wearing a coat that is 3 sizes too small. It pinches, it restricts your breathing. Eventually, you just stop trying. And when you stop trying, you realize that many of those relationships were held together entirely by your effort. When you stopped reaching out, they stopped responding. Sound familiar? You have been mourning these losses like they are failures, but God wants you to see them as a finished assignment. The Bible tells us about a man named Moses who lived through this exact process. In Exodus chapter 3, we see him deep in the desert, tending sheep for his father-in-law. He had gone from being a prince of Egypt, surrounded by the most powerful and influential people in the world, to being a lonely shepherd in the middle of nowhere. For 40 years, the only voices he heard were the wind and the livestock. He was stripped of his status, his connections, and his audience. To the people back in Egypt, Moses looked like a failure who had disappeared into the sand. But God didn't send Moses to the desert to die. He sent him there to get the noise of Egypt out of his ears. Moses needed the silence so he could finally hear the voice in the burning bush. If Moses had stayed in the palace, he would have been too busy being a prince to ever become a deliverer. His circle had to shrink so his calling could grow. You are in your desert season right now. God is removing the people who only knew you as a prince or a friend or a fixer so that you can become the woman He called you to be. He is clearing the room because He is about to tell you something private, and He doesn't want any spectators in the way. The people who left were not bad people. They were just people who didn't have the capacity for where you are going. You cannot take everyone into the presence of God. Even Jesus left the crowd behind when He went up the mountain to pray. It was not a loss of friendship. It was a loss of noise. Number 2, the places that used to bring you comfort now make you feel like a stranger. This internal friction is the evidence that your spirit has outgrown your environment. Let me say this straight. It is one thing to lose friends, but it is another thing entirely to lose your sense of home in the very places that used to define you. You walk into your childhood church, the place where you were baptized, where you learned every hymn by heart, and suddenly, the air feels thin. You sit in the same wooden pew you have occupied for a decade. You look at the familiar stained glass and the same faces in the choir, but something has shifted. The sermon that used to move you now feels like a list of chores. The community that used to feel like a warm blanket now feels like a cage. You find yourself checking your watch, wondering how much longer you have to stay, and feeling a deep sense of guilt because you don't want to be there. It isn't just church. It happens at Sunday dinner with your family. You sit at the table where you have laughed for 30 years, but as you listen to the stories and the familiar rhythm of the conversation, you realize you have nothing to contribute. You see the world through a lens they don't even know exists. You try to share a new realization God gave you during your morning prayer, and you see them exchange a look. You see the subtle roll of an eye, or the way they quickly steer the talk back to the weather or the neighbors. You realize that to stay in that room, you have to shrink yourself. You have to speak in a smaller voice. You have to ignore the fire burning in your bones just to keep the peace at the table. You drive home in silence, and for the first time, your own house feels foreign too. You look at the books on your shelf, the clothes in your closet, and the routines of your day, and you feel like a squatter in someone else's life. You are physically in the same space, but spiritually, you are miles away. You feel a restlessness that sleep cannot fix. You feel a hunger that food cannot satisfy. You are mourning a version of yourself that no longer fits in the world you built for her. Maybe that is you. You feel like a foreigner in your own zip code, and you are terrified that you are becoming a person who belongs nowhere. The Bible tells us about a woman named Ruth who knew this exact displacement. In the first chapter of the book of Ruth, she had a choice to make. Her husband was dead. Her father-in-law was dead. Her sister-in-law, Orpah, decided to stay in Moab, the land where they grew up, the land of their gods, the land of the familiar. Orpah chose the comfort of what she knew, even if it was empty. But something inside Ruth had been changed by her time with Naomi and the God of Israel. In Ruth chapter 1, verse 16, she makes a declaration that makes no sense to the world. She tells Naomi, "Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God." Ruth was willing to become a stranger in a foreign land because she could no longer be at home in a land that did not honor her God. She walked away from her culture, her parents' house, and every safety net she had ever known. She didn't have a map. She only had a pull in her spirit that told her Moab was no longer big enough for the woman she was becoming. If she had stayed in Moab to be normal, she would have been just another widow in the history books, because she was willing to be uncomfortable and out of place. She became the great-grandmother of King David and an ancestor of Jesus Christ. Her displacement was the doorway to the lineage of the Messiah. You are feeling that same pull right now. God is making your current environment uncomfortable, because He is preparing to move you to a place where your gifts can actually breathe. He is letting the familiar feel itchy so that you will finally be willing to pack your bags. You are not losing your life, and you are not becoming an outcast. You are becoming a pioneer. You are being prepared for a territory that requires a woman who isn't afraid to walk alone into the unknown. He is moving you. Number 3. You feel a heavy weight for things you cannot yet name. This unexplained burden is not anxiety. It is God's invitation to a secret conversation. Let's be honest. There are days when you wake up and the air in your room feels heavy. It isn't the heaviness of depression where you want to stay under the covers and hide from the world. It is a different kind of weight. It feels like a prompt. It feels like you are standing on the edge of a great cliff, looking out into a fog, knowing that something massive is moving just out of sight. You go through your day, you go to work, you fold the laundry, you cook dinner, but there is a part of your spirit that is constantly looking over its shoulder. You find yourself sitting in your car after you have pulled into the driveway, staring at the steering wheel for 10 minutes before you go inside. You aren't thinking about anything specific. You are just feeling the pressure of something that hasn't arrived yet. You might find yourself suddenly moved to tears while listening to a song that isn't even sad, or you find yourself wide awake at 3 in the morning, your heart racing, feeling like you need to pray. But when you open your mouth, you don't even have the words to explain what you are praying for. You try to talk to your friends about it, and they tell you that you are just stressed. They suggest you take a vacation, or get more sleep, or try a new hobby. They look for a logical, earthly reason for your spiritual weight. But you know that a vacation won't fix this. You know that no amount of sleep will settle the stirring. In your soul, you are carrying a burden for a future that God hasn't fully revealed to you yet. You are pregnant with a purpose that doesn't have a name, and because people cannot see the child, they assume you are just carrying unnecessary weight. You know this feeling. You have spent months wondering if you are just becoming more sensitive, or if you are losing your grip on reality. You feel like you are holding your breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop. But the shoe never drops. Instead, the weight just grows. The Bible gives us a clear picture of this in the story of a woman named Hannah. In the first chapter of the book of 1 Samuel, We see a woman who was carrying a weight that no one around her understood. Her husband, Elkanah, loved her, but he couldn't understand her heaviness. He asked her, "Why is your heart sad? Am I not better to you than 10 sons?" He was trying to solve a spiritual burden with human logic. Meanwhile, her rival, Peninnah, mocked her relentlessly, turning her private pain into a public spectacle. In 1 Samuel chapter 1 verse 10, it says that Hannah was in bitterness of soul and prayed unto the Lord and wept sore when she went to the temple to pray. She was so overwhelmed by the weight of her burden that her lips moved but no sound came out. The priest, Eli, saw her and thought she was drunk. He judged her based on what he could to see on the outside, completely unaware that she was in the middle of a divine labor. Hannah wasn't just crying because she wanted a baby. She was carrying the weight of a nation that had lost its way. She was birthing the prophet Samuel, the man who would transition Israel from the time of the judges to the time of the kings. The weight she felt was the weight of a prophet's destiny. If she had been happy and normal, like Peninnah, she would have never been desperate enough to make the vow that changed history. Your unexplained weight is to the same thing. God has allowed you to feel the heaviness of the world or the urgency of His Spirit, because He is preparing you to intercede for something that doesn't exist yet. He has given you a bitterness of soul, not to make you miserable, but to make you a midwife for His next move. You are not being weighed down by life. You are being weighed down by the glory that is trying to get out. Wait for it. Number 4. Your peace has become more important than your popularity, and that shift in your values is the evidence that God has realigned your spirit with His. Here is what nobody tells you. There is a price to pay for a quiet soul, and most people are simply unwilling to pay it. For years, you were the woman who lived for the like. You were the one who curated your life so that everyone would think you were happy, successful, and approachable. You were terrified of someone being mad at you. You would stay up half the night, replaying a 3-second interaction, wondering if your tone was too sharp, or if you had accidentally offended someone you don't even particularly like. You were a prisoner to the opinions of people who didn't even have a key to your heart. But something has changed. Lately, you have found yourself choosing the quiet corner over the center of the room. You have stopped explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You see a text message that demands a defense, and instead of typing out a 3-paragraph response, you just put the phone down. You have realized that an argument won is still a peace lost. You would rather be thought of as difficult or distant or even wrong than spend one more ounce of your emotional energy trying to manage someone else's perception of you. You used to be afraid of the silence, but now you protect it. You have started saying no to invitations without giving a long list of excuses. You just say you aren't able to make it. You have stopped participating in the gossip sessions at work, even if it means you are the one they talk about when you walk away. You have decided that if the price of belonging is your peace, the price is too high. You are finally learning that your yes has no value if you are not allowed to say no. Sound familiar? You have felt guilty for a build this new boundaries, thinking you are becoming cold or uncaring, but you are actually just becoming focused. The Bible speaks to this in the story of Mary of Bethany. In Luke chapter 10, we see 2 sisters hosting Jesus into their home. Martha was doing exactly what society expected of a woman. She was busy. She was distracted. She was worried about the service, the food, and the appearance of the house. She was doing the right things, but she was doing them with a restless spirit. She even tried to recruit Jesus to her side, complaining that Mary was just sitting there, doing nothing. In Luke chapter 10, verse 42, Jesus gives a response that should be the anthem for your life, right now. He says, "But one thing is needful, and Mary hath chosen that good part, which shall not be taken away from her." Mary sat at the feet of Jesus while the house was in a state of chaos. She ignored the cultural expectations of a hostess. She ignored the glaring looks from her sister. She ignored the to-do list that everyone else thought was the priority. She recognized that the creator of the universe was in her living room, and everything else was secondary. She chose the good part, which was his presence. She didn't defend herself to Martha. She didn't apologize for not helping in the kitchen. She just stayed at his feet. God is teaching you how to be Mary in a world full of Marthas. He is teaching you that you don't owe the world an explanation for your stillness. He is stripping away your need for external validation so that your only validation comes from him. If people think you have changed, it is only because they no longer have access to the parts of you that you have reserved for God. You are not being selfish. You are being consecrated. So the question is not why they are offended by your boundaries. The question is why you were ever comfortable being a doormat for people who don't even know your name. Number 5. People are reacting to your light with an intimidation they cannot explain. This friction is the evidence that the authority you carry is disrupting the spirits that other people have made peace with. Let's talk about the thing you have been noticing but haven't dared to name. You walk into a room at your job, at a family gathering, or even in a circle of friends, and the atmosphere immediately shifts. It is not that you said anything wrong. It is not that. You were wearing something flashy or trying to take up space. In fact, you probably did the opposite. You likely tried to shrink. You sat in the back. You kept your mouth shut. You stayed in the corner and hoped to blend in. But even in your silence, you felt the eyes on you. You saw the way the conversation suddenly felt brittle and thin the moment you sat down. People who are usually loud and confident suddenly become defensive around you. They start explaining their life choices to you without you even asking. They might make little backhanded comments about how holy or perfect you are, trying to poke a hole in a balloon they don't understand. You haven't judged them. You haven't preached at them. But your very existence feels like a silent critique of their comfort zone. They are reacting to a frequency in you that they cannot tune into, and it makes them deeply uncomfortable. You leave those interactions feeling like you are the problem. You go home and replay every word, wondering if your face looked too serious or if you were being too quiet. You think you are being rejected because of your flaws, but you are actually being resisted because of your light. You know this feeling. You have spent years trying to dim your brightness just so other people wouldn't have to squint. You have apologized for your vibe and tried to make yourself more palatable, but the friction only increases the more you grow. In God, the Bible shows us this in the life of a woman named Esther. In the 2nd chapter of the book of Esther, we see a young woman who was taken from everything she knew and placed in a palace full of rivals. She was just one of many, a face in a crowd of women competing for the king's attention. But verse 15 says that Esther obtained favor in the sight of all them that looked upon her. Did you catch that? It wasn't just the king. It was everyone. Even the people who should have been threatened by her could not help but recognize that something different was on her life. Haggai, the man in charge of the harem, saw it immediately. He didn't just give her standard treatment. He gave her the best place in the house and 7 choice maids before she ever even met the king. Esther didn't have to claw her way to the top. She didn't have to use her words to convince anyone of her value. The seal of God on her life did the talking for her. That same seal is what causes people to react to you today. Some will respond with favor they can't explain, and others will respond with an intimidation they can't justify. Both reactions are proof that you are being separated. If you were just like them, they wouldn't be uncomfortable. If your light wasn't real, they wouldn't feel the need to try and dim. God has placed a weight of glory on you that is meant to occupy rooms, not just corners. Stop apologizing. Corners. Stop apologizing for the shift in the atmosphere when you walk in. You weren't meant to fit into their world. You were meant to bring His world into theirs. They aren't rejecting you. They are reacting to Him. Number 6. Your hunger for God has outpaced the people you used to pray with, and that spiritual starvation you feel in normal settings is actually the evidence of your growth. Here is the truth you have been trying to hide from yourself. You are bored with the version of Christianity that everyone else seems to be satisfied with. For years, you were all on the same page. You went to the same conferences, you liked the same worship songs, and you shared the same simple, safe prayers. You were part of the group, and it felt good to belong. But lately, you have felt like a deep-sea diver trying to have a deep conversation with people who are only interested in playing in the waves on the shore. You sit in the pews on Sunday morning and you find yourself overwhelmed. During the worship, the presence of God feels so heavy and so close that you can almost touch it. You are moved to tears, not because you are sad, but because you are in awe. But when you open your eyes and look around, you see people checking their watches. You see them whispering about where they want to go for lunch or scrolling through social media while the word is being preached. You feel like a stranger in your own church. You start to wonder if there is something wrong with your emotional state. You try to dial it back. You try to stand still and keep your face neutral so no one thinks you are being dramatic or extra. You try to talk yourself out of the hunger, telling yourself that you should just be happy with a normal Christian life, but the hunger will not go away. In fact, the more you try to ignore it, the louder it gets. You find yourself staying up late into the night, reading the Bible, until the sun comes up, because the words feel like living bread to a starving woman. You find yourself driving the long way home, just so you can have 10 more minutes of talking to Him in the car. You have realized that you can no longer have casual conversations about your faith. You don't want to talk about the church politics, the new building project, or the latest Christian celebrity scandal. You want to talk about Jesus. You want to know His heart. You want to see His power move in your neighborhood. And because you are the only one in your immediate circle who feels this way, you have started to withdraw. You would rather be alone in your room with Him than be in a room full of people who are bored with Him. Sound familiar? You have been apologizing for your intensity, but that intensity is the very thing God is using to set you apart. The Bible tells us about a woman named Anna who lived in this state of holy isolation for most of her life. In Luke chapter 2, we meet her. She was a widow who had been alone for 84 years. She didn't have a husband, she didn't have a family to go home to, and she didn't have a social circle to entertain her. Luke chapter 2 verse 37 says she departed not from the temple, but served God with fastings and prayers night and day. Think about the thousands of people who walked through that temple every single day. They came to perform their required sacrifices. They paid their temple tax. They said their traditional prayers, and they went home to their comfortable, normal lives. They probably walked past Anna every day and thought she was a bit much. They probably whispered about the intense old woman who never left, the woman who was always fasting, the woman who was too religious for her own good. But because Anna He was willing to be isolated by her hunger. She was there for the moment that changed history. When Mary and Joseph brought the baby Jesus into the temple, the casual believers saw just another child and a couple of poor parents. But Anna, because her spirit was tuned to a different frequency, saw the salvation of the world. Her hunger gave her eyes that could see what the crowd missed. Your hunger is not a burden, and it is not a mistake. It is a biological signal from your spirit that you are meant for more than the surface-level religion you see around you. God has given you a spiritual appetite that the world cannot satisfy and that casual church-going cannot fill. He is separating you from the crowd, even the religious crowd, so that when he moves, you will be the one standing in the right place to see it. You aren't too much. You are just finally enough for what he is about to reveal. Let that sit for a moment. You have spent a lot of time lately feeling like a puzzle piece that was dropped into the wrong box. You thought your isolation was a sign of your brokenness. You thought that because you were being moved out of the circle, you were being forgotten by the Father. But I need you to hear me clearly. You were not rejected. You were protected. You were not forgotten. You were being hidden in the palm of his hand until the timing was right. Those who left your life did not leave because you were not enough. They left because God knew they could not handle the version of you that is coming next. To the woman watching this who has been crying in her car, wondering why she feels so different, you are exactly where you are supposed to be. To the woman who is tired of apologizing for her standards, her boundaries, and her hunger for more, stop shrinking. The silence in your life right now is not empty. It is full of the Holy Spirit. He is pruning the dead branches so that the fruit, all of your next season, does not have to share the nutrients with things that were never meant to survive. The journey. He is not just preparing a place for you. He is preparing you for the place you were never meant to be defined by who stayed. You were meant to be refined by who left.